Hello friends, it's Kristie Marcotte. I recently purchased a couple of fun dies from Jaded Blossom. These are their card layer dies, and they currently have two different sets. Now this is one large die, so it's all one piece, but it'll cut out several different pieces, and I love that it has that faux stitch detail along the outside edge. They're designed to use with a 6x6 sheet of paper, and you know how much I love using 6x6 paper pads. So I thought it would be fun to use both of the dies and create a set of cards. The paper collection I'll be using is from Doodlebug. It's called Love Bugs, and this is an old collection from 2014, so it's not even available anymore, but I still had quite a few sheets left over. I selected 6 different pattern papers. It's a nice thing about using 6x6 pattern papers is all of the designs generally coordinate. So here are all the pieces all cut out and ready to go. And here's all that's left from a sheet of 6x6 paper after you cut out all those pieces. So just that really thin border. I love that there's really no waste at all when you use these dies. So I'll zoom out just a bit more so you can see all the different pieces. For this black and gray paper with all the arrows, I used the die number 2. Now you could use just one of the dies to create cards, but I think it's fun to have a little more variety with the 2 dies since you'll have a lot more pieces to select. I will be creating 4 different card designs and 3 of each. I'll just mix and match the pieces. To start out, I'll just lay out the main pieces on a card base. So you can see I'm just moving them around, figuring out the placement. So now there's card 1, and I'll start working on the second one. So this first card design, I'm only using dies from the number 2 set. So I just rotated all of those pieces for those first 3 cards. And now for the second card design, I have these large triangles. And one thing I want to mention, if you have a pattern paper that is direction specific, you may end up with pieces that are upside down. So 2 of the pattern papers I'm using with all the floral and hearts, the hearts are one specific direction. So some of the pieces, when I cut them out, will end up upside down, or I need to alter the design so they're not upside down. So here I'm on to card design number 3. I have that large banner. I'm adding that pocket die and then also a thin banner across. You can see there my hearts, they're upside down. And now I'm on to my final design, so design number 4. And with only 3 pieces, I did struggle trying to figure out a card design for this. I think these pieces would work well with another card sketch, but I really wanted to focus on just the die cut pieces created using these 2 die sets. So now I'll go ahead and start assembling 1 card from each design, and I will still show all of the other cards I create. I'll be layering everything on some red cardstock and using some Barely Art liquid glue to attach the pieces. Since they do have that faux stitch detail along the edge, I just want to make sure they lay down flat. Now I could add a cardstock layer for this diagonal piece, but I decided to keep it fairly simple and not add a ton of extra layers. Since there is a gap between those 2 background pieces, I did add a scrap piece of cardstock just so everything stays at the same level. I'll attach that diagonal strip, put some ATG tape on the back, and attach my card front to a card base. And I will be leaving that 1/8 of an inch of the white card base showing. I have a stitched oval die cut. I use some white shimmer cardstock for that. I'll adhere it to the center of my card. For the images on my card, I'm using the ephemera pack from Doodlebug. This is their Made with Love collection. I did a 6x6 video on it earlier this year, and I still have a ton of pieces. And since the colors match perfectly with this collection, I decided I would use them. So I have the little stack of bowls, and I am popping these up using some thin foam squares. Also have the broken egg. I love how they're all very happy and smiley. Put some foam squares underneath, and then the areas that it'll go on top of the bowl, I'll put some liquid adhesive. And then I also have one of the hearts. And I'll put put a foam square underneath that and adhere it to the right above those bowls. For a sentiment on the card, I'm using a Pretty Pink Posh stamp set. This is their Simple Sentiments, and I've already stamped out Your Sweet. I cut the right side at an angle just for some extra interest, and I will add that scrap piece of cardstock to the right side where it goes off of that oval die cut. And then I'll adhere it right underneath the bowls. And I will use this sentiment for most of my cards. To finish off the card, I'll use some gem stickers from Honeybee Stamps, and these are some that I have left over from previous videos. I love their gem stickers since the size is nice and small. For this card, I'm using just the clear. I'll put a couple around the sentiment and one to the left of those bowls. So there is my finished card, and here are the other two using that same card design and some different ephemera pieces. I think this is my favorite card design. I love those die cut pieces. It's perfect for using 2 or 3 different pattern papers. You could add just a solid piece of cardstock in the center if you didn't want to have too many pattern papers together. Now moving on to card design number 2. For this card, I'll use those large triangle die cut pieces. Put some liquid adhesive on the back and adhere them to some white shimmer cardstock. Here's where I have some pattern paper that is direction specific, has all those hearts in the background. The flowers don't matter, but the hearts do. So I'm gluing both of those triangle pieces to the outside corner, leaving that probably about a ½ inch gap in the center. And then I'll layer this on some red cardstock. And this cardstock layer is an additional 1/4 inch, and I won't have any of that white card base showing. I'm also adding one of the narrow banners. So this is where I'll be bringing in one more of the pattern papers. And if you didn't notice, that pink solid is actually one of the pattern papers in that Doodlebug collection. So I have several different ephemera pieces, just trying to figure out what piece I want to use. I have the little muffin and one of the cookies. I will pop these up again using some of the thin foam squares. We'll also add that red heart above the 2 little treats. So on the cookie, I'll leave that very left-hand side open. It's going to overlap the muffin. So I will put just a drop of liquid adhesive. Now I'll add that little heart and then use that same sentiment, the Your Sweet. So just trying to figure out where I wanted to place it. I'm going to shift the heart just a little bit so I can sneak it underneath the heart and above that muffin ephemera piece. So I'll attach that using some liquid adhesive. Then to finish off the card, this time I'm using some enamel dots from Waffle Flower, and these are just clear. So I'll put 2 of them in the upper right hand corner, 2 in the lower left hand corner, and 1 to the right of that muffin. So there is my finished card, and here are the other 2 using that same card design, and again just some different ephemera pieces. It was so nice to use up some of the ephemera and bling that's been sitting around in my craft room. I really love the ephemera packs by Doodlebug, but they come with so many pieces. It's more than I can ever use when I finish off a paper pad. So now moving on to card design number 3. So for this large banner, I have the hearts upside down and I'm just going with it right now. I decided not to add any other designs. You won't see most of the hearts on this pattern paper since they will be covered up with other papers and also ephemera pieces. I'll add the little pocket die cut. I did put some scrap cardstock on the right side before adhering it in place. And then I have the banner that's going to go across the top. Again, using some of those scrap pieces of cardstock to keep everything at the same level. Then I'll put some ATG tape on the back and adhere this panel onto some red cardstock. And again, I have that 1/4 inch of that cardstock layer since my background piece is 4 inches by 5 1/4 inch. All of my cards in this video are American Standard A2 size. I pulled out a couple of the ephemera pieces. I have the cheesecake and also the serving utensil. And I love how the little serving utensil is winking. It's so cute. I did add some foam squares to the back, and I'll adhere these to that upper left-hand corner. And I have the sentiment, "Yours sweet." Like I said, I use this one on most of the cards. Put that small scrap piece of cardstock on the left side of the sentiment before adhering it to the card. And I'll place it right underneath the cheesecake. Then for a finishing touch, I'll pull out the Honeybee Stamps gem stickers again, using some more of the Clair. Put one underneath the sentiment, one to the left of that serving utensil, and then one above the cheesecake. And I decided to leave that white space in the right-hand corner. I think it worked out okay. So there are my 3 finished cards using this card design. If you don't like having all that white space, you could always add a sentiment in that lower right-hand corner. So now moving on to my final card design. So this is where I have just those 3 small pieces left over. Again, using some white shimmer cardstock for the background, and I'll layer it on that red cardstock. Taking all 3 of these pieces and layering them, and they'll all be in that upper left-hand corner. So sort of similar to card design number 3. I'll add those scrap pieces of cardstock underneath first. I'll use some liquid adhesive and adhere this larger, I don't know what that would be called, banner. And this is another pattern paper that it is upside down because of those little hearts. But you can see most of them will be covered up. I'll add some scrap cardstock underneath this polka dot paper. And I did need to add 2 small pieces of cardstock just to make sure it's at the same level. Put some liquid adhesive on the back and adhere it to the card. Now for the image on this card, I'm not using any of the Doodlebug ephemera pieces. Instead, I'll be using some of the cut-aparts that were included in this paper collection. But first, I'll add a sentiment in that lower right-hand corner. This is from Pretty Pink Posh. The sentiment is "A Happy Hello," and it's part of their Koala Friend set. It's so funny, these koalas are adorable, but I bought this stamp set just for that sentiment. So I did use my Mini Misty, wanted to make sure to get a nice solid impression. I'll put my card front onto a card base. And you can see that ink was not quite dry, so I was trying to be really careful not to smudge it. So here's one of the cut-aparts, these adorable little ladybugs. They're so sweet. Before adhering it to the card, I will add those scrap pieces of cardstock. And I thought about adding a cardstock layer behind that cut-apart, but I didn't want to cover up any more of those pattern paper pieces, since this cut-apart is already fairly large. So I'll adhere it to the upper left-hand corner. Then to finish off the card, I'll bring in some shape sprinkles from Doodlebug. And these, again, are very old. I'm not sure how long I've had them. But the colors match perfectly. I put 2 above the sentiment. And then I'll use some of the Honeybee Stamps gem stickers as well. And there is my finished card, and also the other 2 using this same card design. I used some other cut-aparts, so the 3 little ladybugs all stacked up together, and I just cut those out using a circle die. Doodlebug always has the cutest images. It doesn't matter if it's one of their older collections or their brand new collections. And I love how they keep using those same colors so you can coordinate different pieces. Now here's a recap of the 12 cards I made using Jaded Blossom's Card Layer dies. So set 1 and set 2. I love how easy it was to create all of these cards, and I didn't bring in very many extra pieces. Just some ephemera for the images, some stamp sentiments, and some bling, and of course cardstock for the background and the layers. I do have links provided in the description box if you are interested in purchasing the card layer dies. I know I will be using them quite a bit, especially in my 6x6 videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.